So welcome everybody. My name is Chantal Cook. I'm from NALP and thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar. Today's webinar is all about if you're interested in converting your paralegal qualifications into becoming a solicitor. But before we get started, just a couple of things to announce to you. National Paralegal Day. It's getting closer and closer. 11th of November, that's a Monday night, and it will be taking place at Six Clerks, which is in the Law Society building. So we really hope you can join us. Tickets are now on sale. There is a very limited number because of the space, obviously. So if you want to come along and join us at National Paralegal Day, then please do get your tickets very soon because they do tend to sell out. Nigel has put a link in the chat if you're interested in doing that, and we hope we will see you there for a night of, some good company, some chit chats, some food, some drinks, and of course our NALP awards as well. We've got one more webinar this summer before we actually break for the summer. That webinar is on the 24th of July, usual time, 1 o'clock, 24th of July. And this is about the new NALP Level 3 qualifications. So if you kind of want to know more about those, want to understand how they've changed, what this means to you, etc., then that is definitely a webinar you want to join. And that's on the 24th of July. And that's the last one before the summer. Then we'll be back again in September with a more webinars. So in other words, our autumn webinar program, which will take place, I said, September, October, and November, and then with a break in December as well. And then finally, Nigel will be putting up towards the end of this a link to feedback, plus you'll receive an email this evening with a link to the feedback forms. We really ask you, if you've got the time, please do fill this in. It's super helpful for us to know, what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like changed. If there's topics you'd like us to cover that we haven't done yet, let us know and we will do our very best to accommodate that for you. So let me now welcome again Rob Dudley, Head of Employability and Engagement at BARBRI. And let's crack on with these questions, Rob. I tell you, I have so much to ask you that I can't imagine we're going to finish by 1:30, but we'll do our best. So, as you know, most paralegals have specifically chosen to be a paralegal, and that's the career route they want to take. However, for some, that kind of law bug gets them a little bit more than maybe they originally anticipated, and therefore there's this thinking about converting to actually being a solicitor. So if that is something that a paralegal wants to do, can you tell me, how do you do that? What's the process?
Yeah, of course. Great question, Chantal, to kick us off. I think it's all about personal choice, personal development. We get lots of different students who maybe have experience of working as a paralegal for some time and are just thinking of taking that next step. I personally feel as though it's a really good idea to start off talking to your employer. So if you are working for an organization at the moment as a paralegal, think about approaching them to talk about funding for it, because actually it may be a benefit to them to have you qualified as a solicitor potentially. I think also have that conversation with your employer around things like what sort of opportunities there might be within your existing business or your existing employer if you do then qualify as a solicitor. They may feel as though they don't need you to be qualified as a solicitor. Your paralegaling is absolutely sufficient for their business needs. So I think having that very open and honest conversation can be useful. It may depend on the employer, of course, as to whether you feel comfortable doing that. But a lot of the time, certainly the students that I see are funded by their employers. If they're not and they are self-funding, sometimes that's just a case of them wanting to move on to another organization at some point in the future. I think another thing to think about is the area of practice that you are thinking about. You may be practicing at the moment as a paralegal in I don't know, in real estate, for example, but you may want to go into a completely different practice area once qualified as a solicitor. And I think when you're thinking about that, do consider what sort of opportunities there might be in the legal employment market for that particular area of practice. So have those considerations when you're considering this in terms of your process for thinking about qualifying as a solicitor. Many of you may well have an LPC under your belts already from and working as a paralegal. There are exemptions available to you. If you do have a legal practice course, if you've completed one, you can apply to the Solicitors Regulation Authority, which is, of course, the regulator, for an exemption for SQE1. You would still need to take SQE2, but that's, you know, that's a fantastic springboard into the solicitor profession by only having to do one of the exams as opposed to both of them. And that will obviously save you time, it will save you money. So again, something to consider if you've got that LPC under your belt. And then I suppose the other thing to mention is that one key element of the whole Solicitors Qualifying Exam process is not just the exams, but also the qualifying work experience element that needs to be satisfied. And that is a 2-year requirement. Again, I can talk about that in a bit more detail because it is quite a complex area. But certainly for those of you who are considering this in terms of qualifying as a solicitor, you can retrospectively accredit the time that you have already counted whilst working as a paralegal towards your qualifying work experience. It may be that you've got 5-10 years experience as a paralegal, and in that case, that's fantastic because that will count towards, depending on the work that you've done, that will count towards your QWE. So there's lots and lots of benefits here in terms of if you've already got an LPC, if you've already got some experience under your belt. But I do think it's all down to personal motivation. And if it's something there where you think there may be an opportunity to be funded by your employer, then do have that conversation.
Lovely, thank you. Just a quick reminder to everybody, could you make sure that you're on mute, as there's sometimes a little bit of background noise and it's quite distracting for everybody. So if you haven't already, could you just double check that you've got yourself on mute? That would be lovely, thank you. So back to the questions. So you mentioned a little bit about work experience, and we will come back to that. But in particular, if you've already got some NALP paralegal qualifications, do they count for anything? Do they help you go through this process?
From an exam perspective, they don't help. But what I would say is that if you've already got a sort of, you know, level 3 or a level 4 or 7 qualification, then you will have covered quite a lot of content that is covered within SQE. It's not directly applicable, but you will almost be a little bit of a step ahead because the SQE covers areas like civil litigation, criminal, real estate, corporate, business organizations, lots and lots of things that you will potentially have covered previously, particularly if you've done an LPC as well. I know within the NALP qualifications as well, of course, that provides a lot of practical skills. And again, those practical skills are really valued, particularly for SQE2, which is all about assessing your ability to apply the law. And also to give you that extra sort of those professional skills that are so valued. I think as well, it goes back to what I was saying from your first question, Chantal, about the area of practice that you want to work in. So if you're thinking, okay, well, I've been working within, like I said, in let's say commercial property, for example, and you want to qualify as a solicitor and you still want to work in commercial property, that's going to be hugely advantageous to you because you're going to have all of that incredible experience that whoever your future employer is going to be will massively value. So I think, yes, to a degree, there's certainly value in your existing qualifications, but not, you know, exclusively.
And I guess if nothing else, it's the fact that you've done exams and you kind of know how the process works, because legal exams are a little bit different from, say, doing a history exam or something.
Yeah, that absolutely. That's definitely something to consider. We certainly see a stronger correlation of students who pass SQE who have either just finished a qualification already and are sort of in that mindset to continue that studying and that application. But we're also, you know, we serve such a wide demographic of somebody who might be qualified in Mexico, for example, for the past 10 years and has been practicing and just wants to requalify into the UK, or like yourselves have been paralegaling for a number of years. And sometimes it can be really, really overwhelming to have to then consider taking exams again. But you'll get a learning coach throughout the journey who's a qualified lawyer themselves, who'll help handhold you through that process, because we know it can be quite tough going, particularly if you're trying to balance this with either working full time or you've got responsibilities at home or whatever it might be. So so we are there. We'll do all the heavy lifting for you so that you can get through those exams.
Brilliant. Now, you mentioned a little bit about your employment, as in if you've already got work experience, that can help as well. Do you want to say a little bit more about specifically how it helps?
Yes, there is a very helpful page actually on the Solicitors Regulatory Authority website, which talks about qualifying work experience. So I'd really encourage you all to have a look at that, whatever stage you're at. If you've got some experience already, and you are able to have it signed off by either somebody who has overseen the work that you've been doing, or not, as the case may be. There are a number of organizations in the market now that offer a sign-off service. Now you might think, oh, hang on a second, why would I entrust somebody who I've never met to effectively sign off the experience that I have under my belts? And I completely get that. But because what you're effectively doing with this is the SRA is not requiring you to demonstrate from your experience that you are a competent lawyer. All they are saying is, have you met a number of what they call competencies? So there's a whole list of solicitor competencies that you can access on the SRA's website. There are about 4 or 5 kind of overarching ones, and they are very, very wide. So it could be things like, have you undertaken legal research as part of your previous experience? Have you acted with, ethically and competently and with integrity, for example? So they're not, what they're doing is they're saying, we're effectively wanting you to ensure that you've met 2 of these competencies only, and that we're going to test your competency of being a solicitor through the SQE exams. So it's taken away the onus of competency from the experience to the actual exams themselves. So please don't worry too much if you feel as though, oh, I'm concerned that somebody isn't going to sign me off because they haven't been directly supervising my work. That's not an issue necessarily, as long as you can evidence what you've done and you can show that it's got to have been essentially involving providing legal services, then that's all you need to provide. So it's a relatively straightforward thing, but it does give people quite a lot of anxiety, and which I completely understand. It can be quite overwhelming. There's a really, really helpful template on the SRA's website as well. And I've also, Nigel, I think I gave you the SRA's web link. So do, if you can, pop it in the chat so that people can access it. That'd be great. There's no limit as to how far back you go with qualifying work experience either. So you may not have been paralegaling for the last couple of years, but you've done 5 years prior to that. That's fine. There's no limit on that. And as I said, there's only the need for you to register that 2 years of qualifying work experience once you actually apply for admission to being a solicitor. Okay. So there's lots and lots of different aspects to this. I know it sounds quite complex, but I spend quite a lot of my time advising people on QWE because it is a bit of a minefield. All I would say to you is, whatever experience you've got, as long as it's a quality, it's substantive, it's not just administrative, it's got to be substantive and of quality. I think that's one of the key things. And then I suppose lastly, certainly from our experience as a law school, we see an interesting correlation between those people that already have a bit of experience under their belts, who sit the SQE2, which is the more practical exam. They have a higher chance of passing because it's almost like you've already done it, or you've had experience of doing that. And as you know, the SQE2 is very much focusing on those very practical legal skills, and therefore you will only pick that up if you're actually doing it in practice. So do feel reassured and slightly more, I suppose, confident about the process if you've got experience, because your chances of passing that SQE2 can be quite high.
Thank you. So once I've done all of this, let's say I've gone through, I've done my SQE1, I've done my SQE2, I've passed them both, all good. Am I now a fully qualified solicitor?
The million-dollar question. Unfortunately not. You do, aside from those two exams, SQE1 and SQE2, you do also need to complete qualifying work experience. So if you're on this webinar and you're fresh out of just having qualified as a paralegal, but you don't have very much experience under your belt, if any, you will need that 2-year experience to be able to fully qualify. But like I said, that is not required until the point of admission. So, and of course, you can pursue your qualifying work experience, those 2 years, during your studies, before your studies, or after your studies. It's entirely up to you. It's the whole purpose of the SQE coming on into play was really to give that accessibility and flexibility that everybody craved, wanting to go into the solicitor profession, that wasn't there before. Certainly when I went through the qualification process, I did the old LPC and training contract, and that was very, very restrictive and structured. So there was a bottleneck of people who were completing qualifications and then not being able to access training contracts. Yes, training contracts still exist, but there are so many more employers out there now who were restricted in offering training contracts previously under the old system, who can now provide qualifying work experience. So there's more opportunity, but all I would say is do ensure that the qualifying work experience that you choose to apply for and do is, as I said, of quality and of benefit to you in terms of your future career. If you're thinking, I want to go into corporate law, I want to become a specialist in corporate, and the only QWE you can get is in family law, that's not going to be of great help to you from an employability perspective. So do always consider that when you're looking at those opportunities. So no, SQE1 and SQE2 has to be done. SQE1 first, then SQE2, and then of course your qualifying work experience either before, during, or afterwards. Always also think to yourself, once you are a qualified solicitor after those 3 elements, you will need to continue developing yourself as a practitioner. So there's lots and lots of different skills courses out there to help you navigate and improve. And of course, there's also the opportunity for you to qualify through higher rights as a higher rights advocate. There's lots and lots of different professional development courses that you can pursue beyond your SQE qualification. Lovely.
And so, okay, I guess this is my final question. I can see there's lots of questions coming in the chat, so we'll get to those in a moment. So people want to know more. They've listened to this. They go, yep, this is a route that I want to explore seriously. What's the next step? Where do they go?
Well, they should look at the SRA's website, look at what the SQE involves. I mean, I've just done a very broad brush approach on this today. There's a lot more that we could go into in terms of those exams. The interesting thing about the SQE system is that there's no requirement for you to prepare for those exams. So you don't have to go to a law school. You don't have to pursue any particular accredited course for those exams. It would probably be unwise for you not to investigate providers of these courses. There are multiple. The SRA has a list of providers on their website. There are, from the last time I looked, it was about 110 different providers. It's pretty vast. I suppose there are quite a number of organizations that offer the courses to prepare you for those exams, who are sort of what I would call one-man bands. What I would say, and this is, not just blowing our own trumpet here, but I would say that, if you go to a provider and you research a provider, do look for one that will prepare you for those exams comprehensively. You don't want to get sort of, wading in lots and lots of law that you simply don't need for those exams. Do choose a provider that is absolutely targeted and that course it has been designed specifically for those particular exams. I think also consider your career ambitions. Some people will go through the SQE and qualify as solicitor purely as a sort of additional badge for their CVs and for potential employability opportunities in the future, but don't necessarily want to practice straight away. So again, think about those ambitions and your aspirations. Think about the funding. As I mentioned earlier on, can you get it funded? Our course is about £3,000 for SQE1 and £3,000 for SQE2. Just to mention, if you guys are members of NALP, you do get a discount on SQE1 of 15%. So do have to think about that. You do need to ensure that you take into consideration all of those costs, because it's not, it's not a substantial amounts of money. Because that's only the course fees. You then need to think about the exam fees as well. And of course, for SQE1 and 2 together, that's going to be another £4,000 or there or thereabouts. So it's, it's a big chunk of money that you're investing. And I suppose the only thing just to say is to my earlier point, don't attempt the exam without some guidance or preparation, whatever that might look like. But I would strongly recommend it.
Lovely, thank you very much. Right, we're going to hand over to questions. We've got a few minutes left. Nigel, if I could bring you in, and maybe you can start us off with some of the questions that Rob can then answer.
Well, we've got what seems to be a ever-expanding list of questions, but let's start with the top ones. Dawn asked, can she do the SQE without a degree? She's saying a lot of places say you've got to have a minimum 2.
Yes, it's interesting actually. So publicly, again, if you look at the SRA's website, publicly, it will say that you need an undergraduate degree of any discipline. It doesn't need to be law, it can be anything, or equivalent experience. And that would be determined on the basis of whatever you submit to the SRA for your eligibility. So if you don't have an undergraduate degree, do speak to the SRA, because there is an opportunity for you to be able to access it through the equivalent experience.
Okay, and that might actually cover, no, it's almost the opposite question actually from Ruby. So Ruby says she's got an LLB and she's got a level 7 NALP qualification, but no practical experience. Can the SQE help her career?
Certainly, if you've got your degree, Ruby, I think that's hugely important for access to the SQE. If you've got your level 7 qualification, that's going to certainly help you from a practical perspective as well. Whatever knowledge you've gained from that is going to help you, because it's going to be covered possibly in more detail within the SQE, but those practical skills that you've gained from that qualification are going to help. I know you haven't got any particular work experience yet, but don't let that put you off, because I think what you should be concentrating on is building up your work experience now, and then pursue your SQE either at the same time or further down the line. I think it will certainly help.
Good. And just to combine some of the experience questions, we've had one that says, can experience in any jurisdiction, does that count? Is there issues around that? We've had a couple of people asking about whether if their experience in just one area of law is okay, or does it have to be in multiple areas? And then a couple of people have said, does the work experience have to be within a law firm, or can it be within any other firm but practicing law?
Good group of questions. So first one, yes, it can be gained anywhere outside of the UK. It has to be signed off, though, by a qualified English solicitor or a compliance officer for legal practice. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing I think was around just one area of practice or one piece of experience. That will, again, depends on your motivation. Depends if you want to then, if let's, to my example earlier, if you've just got property experience and you want to qualify as a solicitor, but just also then go into property, that's not going to be a disadvantage to you. If you want to pursue something that's completely different from what you've actually practiced or you've got experience in, then I would recommend that you then try and gain QWE that is more aligned to the area that you finally want to practice in. It's not necessarily going to be a disadvantage, but just when employers look at you and they see that you've got quite sort of disparate experiences, it may just be viewed as not as favourable as somebody who's perhaps got a lot more experience in the particular area they're looking for. I can't remember what the last bit was, Nigel. Sorry, there was another bit of the question.
Does it have to be in a law firm?
Oh yeah, no, it doesn't have to be in a law firm. There's a whole list of different categories on the SRA's website. You can do it within a legal advice centre, pro bono clinic, lots and lots of different opportunities, in-house, of course. So lots and lots of different opportunities for you to pursue it, not just in a law firm.
Somebody asked, is age a barrier?
There's no age restriction on it at all. We have students who are fresh out of university. We have apprentices who go through SQE, and we have our oldest student has been 86. So there is no barrier age-wise to pursuing the SQE.
Okay. Somebody asked, are there any barriers for international students?
For SQE?
Yeah.
No, there isn't at all. We in fact, 20% of our student body is international. Many people from other jurisdictions pursue it, again, simply to add to their CV, or they are working for organisations that do quite a lot of cross-border work, and it can be of value when it comes to both your credibility as being an English and Welsh qualified solicitor, as well as your home jurisdiction. So there's different motivations, of course, as to why international lawyers would want to do it. The only thing is, I suppose, to mention is from an employability and career perspective, you just need to think if you require a visa to work, for example, in the UK to pursue your qualifying work experience. If you want to do it in the UK, of course, you can do it in your home country. But if you want to do it in the UK, that may be more challenging to identify and pursue opportunities if a visa is required. But I would encourage you to apply for the SQE because so many international students do.
Okay. Somebody asked, is the SQE available? Is all of the studying and the SQE available on a part-time basis?
Yes, I mean, certainly with us, I can only speak for us as a law school. We provide our SQE entirely online in 40-week duration, 20-week duration, or 10-week duration. It's all on our website. Again, Nigel, I think I've given you our email, our website address. You will receive a learning coach who is a qualified lawyer to support you through your studies. So if you are concerned that you're working at the same time, they are there to keep you on track. And our technology delivers the training in a way that is flexible for you. So you determine when you want to effectively pursue your course content, not the other way around. So it's absolutely doable. In fact, 80% of our students are working whilst they are pursuing SQE.
Well, I think that there's been a couple of questions around actually paralegal stuff that I've popped answers into the questions thing, but I think that's about it. Oh, Barney asks, what's your pass rate?
Oh, SQE 1, our pass rate is about 75% against the published SRA's rate, which is about 52, 55. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. And then for SQE 2, our pass rate is about 85% against the SRA's published rate, which is about 65%. So yeah, we're outperforming against the wider public.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks, Nigel, for handling all those questions. We had them coming in thick and fast. Fortunately, quite a lot of them were similar kind of things, which hopefully means we were able to answer questions, everybody's questions, but in a more general sense sort of thing. So if there is anything that you haven't had answered and you really is bursting to ask, then if it's directly related to SQE and you'd like to sort of converting qualifications into becoming a solicitor, then please do contact Rob Dudley at BARBRI. He'll be very happy to answer your questions. If it's more related to paralegal qualifications, and membership and so on, then please direct to us at NALP, and one of us will be able to answer those questions to you. Nigel's put links into both websites, I think, into the chat, so you'll be able to access us that way if there's anything you do particularly want to ask. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you also to, that's Rob Dudley, Head of Employability and Engagement at BARBRI. Thank you so much for answering all our questions. Just to remind you all that if you're a member of NALP, you do get a decent discount if you go through BARBRI to do your SQE. And actually that discount is so substantial that it will actually cover your membership fee to NALP and more. So basically, it's a no-brainer, really. Your membership is effectively free at that instance if you're deciding to do that. So if you're not already a member, you should be. So thank you very much to everybody again for joining us today. I do hope we were able to answer all your questions. This webinar will appear on the NALP website and will be accessible to members within the next week or so. And then after that, in about 3 months' time, for those of you who are non-members, but really should sign up. That webinar will then be available to you via the website. They'll be kind of free to access at that point, but that's in about 3 months' time. Quick reminder, feedback forms, there's a feedback link in the chat. There's also feedback forms being emailed to you. We'd very much appreciate if you could fill those in for us. That would be wonderful. Thank you. Don't forget National Paralegal Day, 11th of November. Rob has said earlier that he will be there. So you see, you're going to hate me for this, Rob, but he will be there. So if you're coming along to National Paralegal Day, then maybe he can answer some of your questions, but do give him a chance to have a glass of wine as well, because you know what? It's a social evening as much as it is a celebration of paralegals too. But we hope to see all of you there. And obviously you said Rob will be there too. And then finally, and I will stop talking, 24th of July is our final webinar before the summer break, and that's taking a look at the NALP Level 3 qualifications. That's everything. Thanks again to everybody. Thank you to Rob. Thank you for Nigel for fielding the questions, for Amanda and Jane for being on hand as well, and most especially to all of you for joining us today for this very popular NALP webinar, and we very much look forward to seeing you at future events. Thank you very much.